There's a court document sealed in a Los Angeles vault that tells the story of how The Rock was betrayed by his closest friend and business partner. The betrayal cost him $47 million but led to business decisions that made him over $2 billion. Sometimes your worst enemy gives you your best education. What Dwayne discovered about the betrayal would shock you. It wasn't a crime of opportunity, it was a calculated plan that had been in motion for 3 years. October 23, 2015, 6:47 a.m. Dwayne Johnson was in his home gym, halfway through his morning workout, when his phone rang with a call that would shatter everything he thought he knew about trust, friendship, and business. The caller was Sandra Chin, his longtime accountant, and her voice was shaking. "Dwayne, I need you to sit down. I've discovered something about your business accounts that you need to know immediately." "What kind of something?" Dwayne asked, setting down his weights. "Money is missing. A lot of money. And the only person who had access to these accounts was Michael." Michael Torres had been Dwayne's business partner, closest friend, and most trusted advisor for 8 years. They'd met in 2007 when Dwayne was transitioning from wrestling to Hollywood, and Michael had helped him navigate the complex world of entertainment business with wisdom that seemed far beyond his 32 years. More than a business relationship, their partnership had become a brotherhood. Michael was the best man at Dwayne's wedding, the godfather to his youngest daughter, and the person Dwayne turned to for advice on everything from career decisions to family matters. When Dwayne started $7 Productions, Michael was his first hire and eventually became the company's chief operating officer. But now Sandra was telling him that this man he trusted completely had been systematically stealing from him. "How much?" Dwayne asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Based on what I can confirm so far, at least $47 million. But Dwayne, I think this has been going on for years." The number hit him like a physical blow. $47 million wasn't just money, it represented years of work, successful projects, and financial security for his family. But even more devastating than the financial loss was the realization that the person he trusted most in the world had been betraying him systematically. "Where is Michael now?" Dwayne asked. "That's the other problem. He left for what he said was a business trip to London 3 days ago. But when I tried to reach him this morning about these discrepancies, his phone goes straight to voicemail, and the hotel he was supposed to be staying at says they have no record of his reservation." Dwayne felt the world spinning around him. Michael hadn't just stolen from him, he had planned his escape carefully, timing his disappearance to give himself maximum opportunity to cover his tracks and avoid immediate detection. Over the next 6 hours, as Dwayne worked with Sandra and a team of forensic accountants to understand the scope of the theft, the true magnitude of Michael's betrayal became clear. The embezzlement hadn't been impulsive or opportunistic. It had been a carefully orchestrated plan that began almost immediately after Michael gained access to Dwayne's business accounts. Using his position as COO of $7 Productions, Michael had created a network of shell companies, fake vendors, and inflated expenses that allowed him to siphon money from virtually every project Dwayne worked on. When Dwayne made $15 million for Fast 5, Michael skimmed $800,000 through inflated production costs. When $7 Productions signed a development deal with HBO, Michael created fake consulting fees that redirected $2.3 million to accounts he controlled. When Dwayne's merchandise line generated $12 million in revenue, Michael managed to redirect nearly $1.5 million through a fake licensing agreement. The scheme was sophisticated, methodical, and designed to be almost undetectable. Michael had used his intimate knowledge of Dwayne's business practices, his trust, and his generally hands-off approach to financial details to create a system that allowed him to steal consistently without raising suspicion. But the financial theft was only part of the betrayal. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that Michael had also been selling confidential information about Dwayne's projects to competitors and entertainment media. Script details from unreleased movies, private business negotiations, and even personal family information had been leaked to gossip websites and rival production companies. The man Dwayne had trusted with his most sensitive business information had been monetizing that trust in every possible way. But the most devastating discovery came when investigators found evidence that Michael had been recording private conversations with Dwayne and other family members, apparently for potential blackmail or leverage in case his theft was ever discovered. Sitting in his lawyer's office on October 24th, surrounded by boxes of evidence documenting 3 years of systematic betrayal, Dwayne experienced the deepest sense of violation he'd ever felt. "How did I miss this?" he asked his attorney, David Kim. "How was someone stealing from me for 3 years without me noticing?" "Because," David replied, "he was stealing small amounts relative to your overall income, and he was very careful to make the theft look like legitimate business expenses. More importantly, he was someone you trusted completely, so you never thought to question his explanations or verify his numbers. The legal process that followed was complex and emotionally draining. Michael had fled to a country without an extradition treaty with the United States, making immediate recovery of the stolen funds impossible. The shell companies he'd created were registered in multiple jurisdictions, making it difficult to trace and freeze the money he'd taken. But the deeper Dwayne dug into the betrayal, the more he learned about the vulnerabilities in his business structure that had made the theft possible. His trust in Michael had led him to give one person too much control over his financial affairs. He hadn't implemented proper oversight systems or regular audits that would have detected the theft earlier. Most critically, he had allowed his personal relationship with Michael to override basic business security practices. "I learned that trust and verification aren't opposites," Dwayne later reflected. "You can trust someone completely and still put systems in place to verify their work. In fact, if you really trust someone, you protect them from temptation by creating transparency." The immediate aftermath of the betrayal was devastating. Dwayne had to deal with the financial loss, the emotional trauma, and the practical challenge of rebuilding his business operations without the person who had been managing most of his day-to-day affairs. But more than the money or the logistics, the betrayal shattered Dwayne's ability to trust his own judgment about people. If he could be so completely wrong about someone as close as Michael, how could he trust his instincts about anyone? The depression that followed was the deepest Dwayne had experienced since his football career ended. For weeks, he questioned every relationship, every business decision, and every assumption he'd made about loyalty and friendship. But it was during this dark period that Dwayne made a decision that would transform not just his business practices, but his entire approach to building wealth and success. Instead of becoming more closed off and suspicious, he decided to use the betrayal as education. He would study what had happened, understand the systemic failures that made it possible, and build something stronger and more resilient than what he'd lost. The first step was hiring Victoria Martinez, a former FBI financial crimes investigator, to conduct a complete audit of his business empire and design new systems that would prevent future theft. Victoria's findings were sobering but enlightening. The theft had been possible because Dwayne's business structure was too centralized, with too much power concentrated in too few hands. More importantly, there had been virtually no independent oversight or verification of financial transactions. "Mr. Johnson," Victoria explained during her presentation of findings, "your business was structured like a family operation where everyone trusted everyone else. That works well when everyone actually is trustworthy, but it creates massive vulnerabilities when someone decides to abuse that trust." Victoria recommended a complete restructuring of Dwayne's business empire, with multiple layers of oversight, regular independent audits, and systems that would make it impossible for any single person to access large amounts of money without verification from multiple sources. But she also recommended something more fundamental: diversifying not just his investments, but his business relationships and decision-making processes. Instead of having one trusted partner who handles everything, she suggested, build a team of specialists who each handle specific areas, with systems that require them to work together and verify each other's work. The restructuring process took 18 months and was more comprehensive than anything Dwayne had ever undertaken. He hired new financial managers, implemented new oversight systems, and created redundant safeguards that would make future theft virtually impossible. But more importantly, he used the process to fundamentally rethink his approach to business and wealth building. Instead of focusing primarily on entertainment projects, Dwayne began diversifying into areas where he could build lasting value that wasn't dependent on his personal performance or popularity. Real estate investments, technology startups, consumer products, and equity stakes in other companies became major parts of his portfolio. The betrayal had taught him that depending too heavily on any single relationship, project, or revenue stream created dangerous vulnerabilities. The new empire he built was designed to be resilient, diversified, and capable of thriving even if individual components failed. The results were remarkable. Within 3 years of the betrayal, Dwayne's net worth had not only recovered from the $47 million loss but had grown to levels that exceeded his pre-betrayal wealth by over 300%. The diversified business structure he'd built generated multiple revenue streams that were more stable and predictable than his previous entertainment-focused approach. His new oversight systems gave him better visibility into his finances and business performance than he'd ever had before. But perhaps most importantly, The team-based approach to business management he'd adopted led to better decision-making and more successful projects than his previous reliance on a single trusted advisor. The betrayal forced me to become a better businessman, Dwayne explained in a rare candid interview about the experience. When I was relying on Michael for everything, I was essentially outsourcing my own business judgment. After the betrayal, I had to develop my own expertise and surround myself with diverse perspectives instead of relying on one person's advice. The legal resolution of the case took 4 years, but eventually, most of the stolen money was recovered through international law enforcement cooperation and asset seizure. Michael Torres was arrested in Spain in 2019 and extradited to the United States, where he pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud charges. During the sentencing hearing, Dwayne made an unexpected decision. He asked the judge for permission to address Michael directly in court. "Michael," Dwayne said, looking at the man who had been his closest friend and worst enemy, "what you did nearly destroyed me, not just financially but emotionally. You betrayed my trust, my friendship, and my family's security." Michael looked down at the defendant's table, unable to meet Dwayne's eyes. "But I want you to know," Dwayne continued, "that what you did also made me stronger, smarter, and more successful than I ever would have been otherwise. You taught me lessons about business, trust, and resilience that I couldn't have learned any other way." Dwayne paused, his voice becoming quieter but more intense. "I don't forgive you and I don't thank you. But I want you to know that your betrayal didn't destroy me. It educated me. And the empire I've built since then is stronger because of what you taught me about how to protect it." Michael Torres was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution. But for Dwayne, the real resolution wasn't in the courtroom, it was in the business empire he'd built that was more successful and more secure than anything he'd had before the betrayal. Today, when young entrepreneurs ask Dwayne for advice about building sustainable businesses, he always tells them about the importance of systems, oversight, and diversification. "Trust is essential in business," he explains, "but trust without verification is just vulnerability. The goal isn't to become suspicious of everyone, it's to build systems that protect both you and the people you work with from the temptation and opportunity to make bad decisions." The sealed court document that tells the complete story of Michael Torres's betrayal remains locked away, but its lessons have become the foundation of one of the most successful entertainment business empires in history. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up teaching you the most valuable lessons. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a stronger chapter. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to your business. The $47 million betrayal that nearly destroyed The Rock ended up making him billions, not because of the money he recovered, but because of the wisdom he gained about building something that no single person could ever take away from him again.